Hey, I'm Benedict, and I'm going to be going through how to set up GameMaker Studio 2 to work with audio integration with Wwise using an unofficial tool called GMWwise. Essentially, I struggled a little bit when I first set up GameMaker to run with Wwise. Things like knowing where to put Soundbanks, how GameMaker reads where the Soundbanks are, stuff like that. So you may watch this and think it's a bit obvious, but I had a bit of difficulty with it at the time, so hopefully this video might be some help to someone who was in a similar situation to me before. In this video, I'm not really going to talk about how to use GameMaker or how to use Wwise. I'll have a little breakdown video of a project and how all the Wwise events and calls and stuff like that happen in a different video, but for now this is just a basic setup. Alright then, so I already have the Wwise launcher and GameMaker Studio open, and the first thing we're going to do is download the tool GMWwise. So you can find it, it's hosted on GitHub. A Wwise plugin for GameMaker Studio, lovely, by CaKlassen, I think his actual name is in the manual which comes in it. So we're going to download it from here. And I'm going to stick it in my GMWwise video folder and extract it. Alright, so if we open it up, first of all we got the manual here, so let's open that up. We're going to be using this a lot. And second of all, within sample project, we have a sample GameMaker project and a sample Wwise project, so we're going to be using these as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Wwise project in one window on the right and the folder hierarchy for the GameMaker project on the left. So later on, when we're copying files from one to the other, we'll have to remember that the left side is the GameMaker folder hierarchy and the right side is the Wwise one. Okay then, so the first thing we want to do is have a look at the manual, because the manual tells us which version of Wwise we want to be using. Unfortunately, the more recent versions of Wwise don't work with this tool, so it recommends here to use 2016 2.3.6077. And if you go to the Wwise launcher, go to the Wwise tab, install new versions. Now usually it asks you to install the latest version that's available, but if you go to all 2016.2, this is the one which is available and it's the closest matching number to what is recommended in the manual, and this one works fine, so this is the one I recommend you use. Before we open up Wwise, let's have a look at the actual GameMaker project and see what it's supposed to be doing. Oh, I don't need that one. So if we run this, and of course this project is already set up to work properly, we'll change that later. There we go. So the ball makes a different sound depending on whether or not it hits stone or wood. M to toggle the music on and off, and space for a nice low pass filter effect. Cool. So that's what we're going to be recreating. Well, that's what we're going to be setting up. So we are going to now open up the Wwise project and see what it's got for us. So as this isn't an in-depth video of how to, make your Wwise events and all that lot, we're going to assume that we've already done all the work. If we have a look at the events we've got play bounce, cool, and switch stone or wood. Lovely, it's the same audio sample, just playing at a different pitch for the wood. And then play music, and then depending on your state, plugged ears or non-plugged ears. So that is everything we are going to be implementing. And it's all ready to go. Let's have a look in the Soundbank Manager tab. We want to generate a soundbank, and what we need to do is we need to make sure that these soundbanks are put in the right place for GameMaker Studio to read them and, well, play the sound during gameplay. So first of all, we're going to select our soundbank. This is the one that we've made and we've added all our events to, and we're ready to generate. But let's have a look at the user settings first. We've got a choice of different platforms. We're only going to run to Windows for now. And I can't scroll down to see the Windows one because it's at the bottom of the list. So if I click Override, just have a look down here, it goes into Generated Soundbanks, Windows. Let's have a quick look at that folder. So here we are, we're in the Wwise hierarchy, Generated Soundbanks, Windows, and here, this is everything that's going to be generated. It's already been generated. So we have two Soundbank files with the BNK extension, the initialize one and the main Soundbank file. And then the other one of note is this WEM file. This is where the streamed audio is going to go. So for example, if you have larger music files or background ambience files, you're likely to want them as streamed. And we can see that in here. If I go to the music file, there we are. So this music loop is set to stream. So this is actually included in the WEM file. So all of these things are essentially going to have to find their way into the GameMaker Studio folder hierarchy. And just to make sure that we're actually making a difference, I'm going to set the pitch of the music loop to be much higher so we can obviously hear that what we're generating now is going to replace what is already there in the sample. That sounds much better. Yeah. Okay then, so let's generate it. F7. User settings. We're going to override this just to make sure that it's going into generated Soundbanks windows. Lovely. Okay. Back to here. And here we are. We've got everything and it's been replaced very nicely. It's 1201 now, 1201. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is open up GameMaker and we're going to use the manual to make sure that we're setting up GameMaker, the GameMaker project, to work as we would like it to. So here's GameMaker. What I've actually done is I've removed all of the included files and the extensions that are necessary to let GMWise work. So we're going to go through that ourselves now. So when you do make your own GameMaker project, you'll want to do these little setup steps. Let's open up the manual as well. If we go down to integration, here we are. So this is how we do it from GameMaker Studio. Create or open your GameMaker Studio project. Okay. For Studio 2 only, we're going to open the marketplace and download the GMWise extension. All right, simple enough. So marketplace, open marketplace. GMWise, here it is. Download for Studio 2, import it. And of course, we want everything imported into our project. Cool. So now we'll now see it in the extensions section, GMWise. Perfect. So now we just need to add the sound banks to the correct place. Next, GameMaker Studio 1.4 only. Well, we're not doing that. We're using GameMaker Studio 2. Step 4, create a group within the included files section called it sound. And then step 5, unfortunately, it makes it look a little bit like, this threw me off for a while. It makes it look like you want to have banks and sound as two separate folders within included files. That's not the case. You want included files to contain sound and then sound to contain banks. And as we're doing this, we're also going to look at the folder hierarchy for GameMaker and see what exactly is happening when I add files in here. We want to add the files from within GameMaker. This is like the master control of where things are added and removed. So let's open it up. GameMakerwise sample. Now then, if I have a look in data files is what corresponds directly to included files. We can see it's empty, as is included files. So the first thing the manual asks us for is sound. So I'll right-click, add group, sound. And if I check back in the Explorer, here it is, sound has been added to data files. The next one was banks. Whoops. And if I were to check in the Explorer, sound, banks. Perfect. And now, it doesn't say so in the manual, but I'm actually going to add a couple extra folders here, assuming that we are creating this game, we're creating builds for Windows and for Mac. So say the functionality here, if I want to add sound banks for the Mac, I'll put them into this folder, but for now I'm only dealing with Windows, but in the future, depending on how many platforms you're exporting to, you might have Android, you might have Switch, you might have iOS, whatever you fancy. So, first of all, the sound banks that we've generated in the Wise folder hierarchy need to be moved over to the GameMaker folder hierarchy. So here we are, we've got generated sound banks Windows, We're going to take everything, sound, banks, windows, and I'm going to copy the lot over. Lovely. Once we've done that, we need to add the sound banks and the stream files directly into the GameMaker project from its own hierarchy. And we can kind of see here, we've not touched on what this object is, the object sound controller, but the paths that it's looking for are sound banks Mac and sound banks Windows. Whoops. So sound banks Windows, we're in the right place. We want to take the WEM, soundbank files and drag them straight into here. And here we are, ready to go. If I were to run the project now, we should hear the same thing we had earlier, but with the music pitched up as we changed it and generated that soundbank within Wwise. Beautiful. All right, perfect. So from this point onwards, you shouldn't have to make any changes to this section here, unless, for example, the stream file name changes, then you'd need to re-import it. But from this point onwards, let's assume that I am working on my own game and I'm implementing audio in Wwise as well. I've made an update and I want to have I want the music to be a bit different once again. So let's have the music. Let's just say I'm going to drop it down loads. Let's have a listen to that. Oh, that's beautiful. That's what I want. I'm going to not have it streamed. And then when I go to generate the sound bank, I'm not going to generate it into the Wwise folder hierarchy and then copy it over into the GameMaker one. Right now, I'm going to generate it directly into the GameMaker folder hierarchy. This might not be what you normally want to do, because assume that you're the audio designer working on a project and the game developers, they're working on their own computer. So you're not going to be working on the same one computer where you can have access to all their stuff unless you've got some kind of shared drive. But for now, I'm going to show you how that works anyway. So if I want to overwrite that, let's say I want to go to GMWise video, sample project, GameMaker project, data files, sound, banks, and it's in Windows. So everything is going to be in here. It's not showing me them, of course, because I'm only viewing folders. So it's okay that. We can check that we're in the right kind of place, because the last step of each path is the platform, and Windows is the last one here. And let's generate that. So I've generated it, and it's gone directly into the GameMaker folder hierarchy. So I don't actually need to make any changes to this either, because everything's been replaced in the GameMaker hierarchy. I could, if I wanted, I could delete this streaming file, because remember I changed that background music file to not be streamed anymore. So this isn't necessary. And if I were to get rid of it here, remember how we said that this is like the master section. If I would delete it here, it would be gone from here. So let's have a go at that. Goodbye, yes. And it's gone. All right, well, let's have a listen back then. There we go. Okay, well, that's working perfectly. One thing that I might be tempted to do sometimes, just to make sure that I'm doing everything right and I'm not fluffing up somewhere, if I've made some changes to my sound banks, and I want to make totally sure that what I'm giving over to the developer to put in his GameMaker folder hierarchy is the right thing, I might ask them to delete everything they have in here, and then I would give them all of this stuff. This is the generated Soundbank section from the Wwise folder. Give them all this, and then ask them to repopulate that section in GameMaker. But of course, if you haven't included any streamed audio, you wouldn't have a WEM file to include with it. And then that's just to make totally sure that everything is getting replaced and updated. But otherwise, looks good. Okay, so hopefully that was some kind of help to someone. It took me a couple hours of scratching my head to try and work out how things were working and where things were being saved and where things had to be read from, but I got there in the end. So if you have any questions on it, please let me know and I'll see if I can do something to help. Cheers.